Hi and welcome to 1111 Predicted. I am Del Grande and this is a fast update on the road to the Grand Astral Conjunction of 2020. As the date shows, in my last prediction I announced that 1111 was going to be a possible date for a big event of astral synchronization, because that day was going to happen an astrological alignment related to the themes of the sign of Scorpio, which represents the symbolic death of the king and conspiracy. And that day Bolivia was left without president after was revealed a big election fraud. So now we are going to see in detail the astral meaning. In 1111 occurred a transit of Mercury across the Sun, an alignment that won't repeat until 2032, the year the UN has a limit to impose its famous 2030 agenda of world government, and just 1 year before it gets completed the cycle that will begin with the 2020 Great Conjunction, which, as I am anticipating since beginning of the year, the cycles from 2001, when Argentina was left without president and the anti-terrorist war began, from the revolutions of the 700s and from the reformations of the 500s, which we can see being fulfilled with every predictions month after month. Besides, it's very important that the transit had its maximum visibility exactly over the area of Bolivia. Now we will see that in this astrological alignment there are several elements revealing that it's not just a coincidence. For a start, the Sun and Mercury conjunct in the constellation of the Scales that looks like an eye, and with the Sun forms the Eye of Justice. The Sun is the star that brings an event into the center of the scene. Mercury is the star of communication, and the Scales represent balance and equilibrium, reflected in the change from a long government of the left party, atheist and with a male ruler, to a new provisional government of the right party, religious and with a female ruler. Venus was also involved, the star of the feminine energy making conjunction with Antares, the star of the heart of the Scorpio, which represent crisis and transformation. All this is reflected in the new female president revealed at the center of the storm. And finally, Jupiter, the star of great salvation, made conjunction with the North Pole of the Milky Way, also called the Golden Gate, or Gate of God, reflected on the new president, showing the Bible coming back to the government. This is just a sample of how the government doesn't care about votes or economic, left or right. Those are distractions from the real religion of the politician actors, which is astral magic, seizing the astrological influences in order to perform social rituals to direct the energy of the masses on accepting to be ruled by wizards. In my previous predictions, you can watch examples these astrological synchronizations fulfilled, and at the end you will see an example of the ex-director of the IMF explaining the use of numerology herself. With this now we can prepare for the next astral sync of 1212, because it will be a full cold moon, symbol of a grand finale exactly at 12:12 a.m., almost marking the beginning of the 12th hour, or final hour, of the great transformation coming in 2020. This full moon will be exactly on the south pole of the Milky Way, called Silver Gate or Gate of Humanity, representing existential darkness, descent into the underworld, and matter without spirit. It would be the astrological representation of the called Left Atheist Party. It will happen on the constellation of the Hunter versus the Beast, symbol of finance, value and possessions, but in the sign of the Twins, of communication, and the moon is the star representing motherhood and night. However, this full moon will be opposing the Sun, the king of the stars, representing father energy and day, that will be on the North Pole of the Milky Way, called the Golden Gate or Gate of God, the symbol of illumination, ascension to God, and spirit over matter, reflected on the called Right Religious Party. And this is in the constellation of the Serpent Bearer, symbol of resurrection of the Savior after the chaos, and in the sign of the Archer, symbol of great travels and great knowledge. But in 1212, the Sun will be surrounded by a long alignment, beginning with Mars, star of war, reaching the same place activated on 1111, followed by Mercury, the messenger, and right on time for when Jupiter, the great fortune, enters the center of the Milky Way, where it becomes invisible in the sky, signaling a great shift in world value and moral. At the same time that changes sign, joining feminine Venus, dark south node, powerful Saturn, and Pluto the Destroyer, beginning the first real samples of the 2020 Grand Conjunction that we almost saw happening on the day of the fire of Notre Dame, when the planets almost collide before going retrograde. But now they are at full speed until impact. The moon will be in the astrological elements of earth and air, against the sun in water and fire. The moon in the winter triangle, which represents the famous Illuminati pyramid of conspiracy, and the sun on the eye of Horus, resurrection of the King of Truth. And all this will not just close cycles from 2008, but also will definitely complete what began in 2001, making almost a complete astral inversion of the day of the fall of the towers, which began the anti-terror war and global governance. And it will relive the great revolutions from the 700s and reformations from the 500s. Very well, if you stay until the end, you will see an horoscope about how the 12/12 full moon will affect your sign special, and then the list with the predictions of the path to the Great Conjunction, and even a basic astrological tutorial. But before finishing, we will see the presentation of the ex-director of the International Monetary Fund, demonstrating her use of numerology basis for astral magic.
Good afternoon and thank you very much. Now let me first of all, of course, begin by wishing you all a Happy New Year, given that we are just exactly halfway through between our Western New Year and the Lunar New Year. Now I'm going to test you numerology skills by asking you to think about the magic 7. Most of you will know that 7 is quite a number, and I'm sure that you can compress numbers as well. If we think about 2014, you drop the 0, 14, 2 times 7. So 2014 will be a milestone and hopefully a magic year in many respects. It will mark the 100th anniversary of the First World War back in 1914. It will mark the 70th anniversary, drop the 0, of the Bretton Woods Conference that actually gave birth to the IMF. And it will be the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, 25th. It will also mark the 7th anniversary of the financial market jitters that quickly turned into the greatest global economic calamity since the Great Depression. We've left the deep freeze behind us, and the horizon looks just a bit brighter. So my hope and my wish for 2014 is that after those 7 miserable years, weak and fragile, we have 7 strong years. Now, I don't know whether the G7 will have anything to do with it, or whether it will be the G20. I certainly hope that the IMF will have something to do with it.
As we could see, she makes many numerological references to the Magic 7 in relation to important dates. For a start, the date of the speech adds to 7, then she makes a reference to astrological calendars. She said 2014 are 2 times 7, like 14 years since 2000, when happened a great conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn in the Milky Way, that later opposed Pluto on 2001, on the day of the fall of the towers. In the year 2014 that she called magic, Jupiter completes its orbit and conjunct Pluto again in the Milky Way along with female Venus, in the sign of power, reflected on her. In the First World War, Jupiter and Pluto joined in the Milky Way, and on that year was created the Federal Trade Commission. In the creation of the IMF, Saturn made conjunction with Uranus in the Milky Way. In the fall of Berlin Wall, Jupiter opposed Saturn, Neptune and Uranus in the Milky Way. In the 2008 crisis, Jupiter and Pluto made conjunction in the Milky Way, opposing Mars Warrior. In the Great Depression, Jupiter opposed Saturn in the Milky Way. And then she says, we left the deep freeze behind and the horizon is bright, using the same symbology of the famous animation that predicted the fall of Notre Dame 7 years before, representing an alignment on the Milky Way or Celestial River, which is dark cold on the south and hot bright on the north. Before she finishes, she talks about passing 7 bad years, started on 2008 when Pluto went back to the same place it was during the big revolutions of the 1700s, and talk about coming 7 good years, ending in 2020 with the great conjunction that completes the big astral cycle. She ends thanking the G7 which in that moment was still the G8 because Russia was expelled months later, given the clue that was pre-planned, and she thanks the G20. That is important because the G is not just the seventh letter, but is also at the center of the occult society's symbol. And the societies use as basis the movement of the 7 astrological planets, especially the 7th planet Saturn, ruler of time and ruler of the sign where will happen the 2020 Great Conjunction next to the Milky Way. Finally, we can observe that she celebrates the synchronization with wars, economic crisis, fall of borders, and world government. When I saw this video years ago, I really didn't understand it, but I didn't imagine I would be able to predict their rituals to the date, just before 2020. Even Trump is famous for the Magic 7 because he was born 700 days before Israel independence and declared its capital Jerusalem in the Jewish year 5777, when he became president in 2017, with 70 years, 7 months and 7 days of age. And 7 months later was the Great American Eclipse, which conjunct his king star on his birth astrology. And this year, when a similar conjunction repeated in the exact same date, he screamed to the sky, "I am the chosen one." Something that I predicted a day before. But I am not a prophet, it's just clear that the rituals of destruction are based upon astral synchronization. Excellent. Now on screen you can see an horoscope for the 12/12 full moon and where it will mark changes in your sign. So mark the date. It's important to clarify that the change may not be necessarily felt on that exact date. Some people may feel it on the surrounding days, depending on the individual birth astrology. And although all horoscopes, such as this one, are aimed at your birth or solar sign, it works much better with your ascendant sign, that you can get very easily with your date and hour of birth on many websites with a simple search. So get ready, because on 12/12 there is an astral gate that is already open, and even though the occult powers are already trying to make it dark, our souls are already on the other side, sending and receiving messages from us, leading us to send our own astral to shine a light on the great transformation of the 2020 Great Conjunction, the Great Astral Year, when will come an awakening as never seen before, where much more people will be able to anticipate the synchronizations and project their souls in masses, connecting even in dreams, from mind to mind, heart to heart, and will, to bring the new world order down. And finally, all together, we will be able to see that we are Astral.